You know a comparison has real legs when it forces you to ask whether strongest even means the same thing anymore. That's the thing with Yuji Itadori and Satoru Gojo. The fandom can't let this one go because it's not about picking a winner in a hypothetical deathmatch. It's about two completely different answers to the same question: what does it mean to carry everything? And the craziest part is, the more you think about it, the more you realize they're not even playing the same game, yet they're the only two who actually understand each other's weight. Let's start with the obvious, because you have to. Gojo's power isn't just strength, it's a category error. Limitless and the Six Eyes mean he exists in a different relationship to reality than everyone else. He's not blocking attacks. He's enforcing an infinite series between himself and harm. He's not blasting you with energy. He's colliding convergence and divergence to produce a state that literally doesn't exist in nature. When people say Gojo is untouchable, they mean it philosophically. There's always distance. Always. And that's the part that gets lost when people just call him overpowered. Infinity isn't just a technique. It's a metaphor for his entire existence. He can see everything, process information at a level that should break a normal brain, manipulate cursed energy down to the atomic level, and yet he can't close the gap between himself and another person. That's not a god. That's a guy trapped behind glass watching everyone else live. Yuji, on the other hand, starts from the opposite pole. He's deliberately designed to be flexible, to fit into any situation, to adapt. Gege Akutami himself called him bland, in the best way. A blank canvas that lets the story's cruelty paint him into something unrecognizable by the end. And that's the key. Yuji's power isn't about enforcing his will on reality, it's about absorbing, learning, and growing through contact with others. He eats Sukuna's finger and becomes a vessel. He fights beside Nanami and internalizes that weight. He loses Junpei, and that loss reshapes him permanently. Everything Yuji becomes comes from outside him. Everything Gojo is comes from within him, and that isolation is the difference. Watch how they move in a fight. Gojo's combat intelligence is almost bored. He reads everything instantly, processes centuries of tactical information in milliseconds, and responds with perfect efficiency. But there's no desperation in it, no real risk. He's solving equations that already have answers. Yuji though? Yuji fights like someone who knows he could die at any moment. His battle IQ isn't about perfect information, it's about instinct under pressure, about that split-second decision when Black Flash connects and time distorts. He's not calculating infinite series. He's reading intent, reading fear, reading the moment someone commits to a mistake. That's a different kind of intelligence entirely. Not strategic genius, but adaptive survival. And honestly, put them in a situation neither has seen before, and I'm not sure who adjusts faster. Gojo has the processing power, but Yuji has spent his entire life as a sorcerer being outmatched and learning anyway. The psychological contrast is where this gets heavy. Gojo's arrogance isn't really arrogance, it's armor. He jokes, he teases, he acts like nothing matters because if he stopped performing, he'd have to sit with the fact that he's fundamentally alone. The only person who ever stood beside him as an equal was Jito, and that ended the way it ended. Since then, Gojo has been the strongest in a world where strength means distance. He teaches not because he loves authority, but because he's desperately trying to build a future where no one else has to be him. Every student he trains is a potential replacement. Someone who could share the weight so he doesn't have to carry it alone. That's not ego, that's a guy begging for company in the only language he knows. Yuji's psychology runs the opposite direction. He's not isolated by power, he's drowning in connection. He feels everything, every life lost, every burden he couldn't carry, every person who died while he survived. His willingness to die isn't heroic in a clean way, it's troubling. He places so little value on his own existence because he's so convinced that his value is only in what he can prevent. The Higuruma trial scene is the perfect window into this. When given the chance to plead innocent, to blame Sukuna for Shibuya, Yuji accepts the guilt anyway, not because he's responsible, but because he can't separate himself from the harm his existence enabled. That's not selflessness. That's a kid who's been crushed so many times that taking the fall feels natural. And this is where the comparison stops being about power and starts being about meaning. Gojo represents absolute strength that protects others by standing above them. Yuji represents strength that comes from standing with them. Gojo's infinity keeps everyone at a distance, physically and emotionally. Yuji's whole deal is that he can't maintain distance. He absorbs pain, guilt, responsibility, and keeps going anyway. One is untouchable, the other is permanently scarred. One processes everything, the other feels everything.